Resident Evil 4 Remake is absolutely one of my favorite games of the year, and one of my favorite RE titles of all time. As seen in my review, I think it raises the standard for the series in many ways. While there are things I prefer about the original, I found the remake to be very engaging, deep in its combat, beautiful in its presentation, and rewarding to master. But there was always the issue of cut content. People wanted to know where Ada's mission was, as well as several key moments from the original that were missing. And now that we have the Separate Ways DLC in our hands, it's time to see how well it delivers on completing the RE4 experience. Personally, I had a hard time knowing if I enjoyed this DLC or not. First of all, it's $10, which is kind of off-putting given that the original Separate Ways mission was a free part of the original, and it brings back cut moments from the remake that arguably should have been there already. And Capcom inserted scummy monetization into the base game by charging players for weapon upgrade tickets. I think they made enough money at this point. I do think, however, given the length of the DLC, that it's not so bad that they're charging for it. It's a much larger experience than the original bonus mission. It's a pretty well fleshed out experience. So yeah, if you're upset about being charged for this, I'm with you kinda, but not so much as to be outraged by it. As one Twitter user so elegantly put it, this DLC is not only better, but longer than the entire RE3 remake at 1/6 of the price. And this DLC was apparently made by the B team that made RE3 Remake, so congratulations to them for making something I didn't absolutely hate. Separate Ways takes us through Ada's journey, getting the Amber sample for Daddy Wesker, and seeing her point of view during key moments of Leon's adventure. We see her ring the bell that saves Leon from the village fight, how she comes across Mendez when he's attacking Leon, and even the fight with Sadler that leads to her being strung up as bait at the end of the game. Best of all, we get to see a lot more of Luis, who I think is by far the most improved character of the remake. Unfortunately, the downside to all this extra time spent with Ada is that we have to hear the voice acting again, which sounds about as flat as it did in the main game.
I wonder what has them so riled up.
Every time Luis and Ada talk, you can hear the painful contrast. It goes like this. "Oh man, things are really getting wild around here, don't you think?" "Yeah, they really are." It is what it is, I guess. This is our new Ada, nothing we can do about it. Though eventually her voice bugged me a little less due to the constant exposure. As a total contrast to Ada, we have Wesker, who's just hamming it up like he's well on his way to becoming RE5 Wesker. It's really weird to have the dry, emotionless Ada interacting with a man bordering on being a cartoon. He's entertaining, but I have never liked this version of Wesker as some over-the-top supervillain. I've never liked that they brought him back from the dead. Wesker was just a guy, okay? He was just a corrupt guy doing shady stuff. His stupid plan leads to him dying at the hands of his company's creation, which is then easily taken down by a teenage girl that can't move while aiming her gun. He got brutally killed at the end of RE1, regardless of the ending you got. He should have stayed dead. Him coming back was around the time I lost interest in the RE storyline, because that's when things started getting ridiculous. They introduced an opera-singing anime villain that psychically controlled leeches in RE0 and had Rebecca the nurse take on the tyrant. RE4 had Sadler with a psychic link to people with the parasite. No, I like my Resident Evil to be grounded. Original trilogy forever. Anyway, you make your way through short versions of most of the maps of the main game, doing the same stuff. Shooting bad guys, buying weapons, upgrading them, completing optional missions for Spinels, and I don't know, I wasn't really feeling it. I don't think Separate Ways is bad at all, it just doesn't add much to the gameplay experience. Yeah, you get the ability to rip away shields, and using the grappling hook to fly in for melee attacks is pretty cool, but combat hasn't really been given anything to really make this a fresh experience. You're mostly using the same weapons as before, with the addition of the explosive arrow launcher. And the missions are really lacking in big combat encounters. The island has things picking up a bit later, but most of the experience felt kinda empty to me, really tame. Maybe it's just me and I'm kinda over RE4 at this point, or maybe this DLC isn't offering me that much to get excited about. We don't see any new common enemy types shaking up combat. There's no fresh mechanics making Ada feel like more than just Leon with a very limited grappling hook, and it just feels like more of what I already played a bunch earlier this year, but without the big memorable combat moments. The Garador room is definitely nice, but doesn't come close to the main game Double Garador room. It's basically a lighter version of that, just the one Garador. And I think my favorite fight was the caged-in fight with the knights, as cultists shoot from behind the gate with their crossbows. That fight had some great multitasking going on. I do like that she's grappling around the map. That's a cool way to be moving around these familiar places. And the few additional locations are definitely nice. I do think the boss battles are generally okay to good. Though El Gigante isn't my favorite boss, I really liked using the grappling hook to get on top of the houses to get a better shot at the parasite. That was pretty creative. The U3 boss fight of the Originals campaign is back, expanded upon, making him a stalker that follows you in the opening chapters, using his influence over you psychically as you're infected by a parasite. You fight against him and the illusions he creates, which is great in concept, but quite clunky in execution. I didn't enjoy this fight very much. I just don't think the game's mechanics are well suited for this kind of encounter. But when you fight his monster form, it's pretty good. It feels closer to what works best for RE4's gameplay design. I enjoyed having to bat off Novistadors while focusing on the boss. I like when games do that. But I'm disappointed there was no reimagination of the Originals boss fight using the platform and the ceiling doors. I think they could have done something interesting with that. Still, I enjoyed the fight. Sadler is fine, not very interesting. Thankfully it's short, because his attacks ignoring geometry and hitting me through the pillars was really pissing me off. The return of the laser hallway is also quite disappointing. Even more so being the climax of a very poor original section featuring a new monster that basically just pops out. You run away from him down a few hallways, not fighting him one bit, until you run through the laser hallway and he dies. And you don't even get to see the gory death, it just cuts away. I don't know what they were thinking with this section. Though I shouldn't be surprised this is the same team that created the RE3 Remake intro where you just hold up and run away from Nemesis down a straight hallway. The only good part about this is the lasers forming the tiny square pattern that we saw from the first movie when the guy says shit. They absolutely could have reimagined this and made it something more interesting and interactive. In the RE2 remake, Ada had that device that scans for power sources and changes their signals to open things up. You could have made some kind of gadget or a series of events that created a high-pressure laser hazard that had to be overcome by the player in a short time. Or maybe you have to quickly shoot out certain lasers to open up a path for yourself. Instead, we're just slowly walking and pressing the avoid button. Not very good. The base game has a great example of taking something from the original and improving on it in the Krauser knife fight. What was originally a series of quick reaction QTEs in a cutscene is now a real-time fight using the knife parry mechanic. It's a great evolution of the concept. The laser hallway feels like a step back in comparison. I'm being really critical, I know, but most of this DLC felt like RE4 Remake, just not as good. I appreciate aspects of it, certain moments, certain fights, certain locations. I really like the part where there's a giant spinning drill coming at you and you have to shoot the targets to correspond to the symbols on the doors to escape. That was fun. More of that, please. They should have used that kind of creativity for the laser hallway. The experience is pretty light on puzzles. You'll see several puzzles from the main game, meaning you'll already know the solutions. And there's a few original puzzles that are cute enough for RE4, but not very interesting or challenging. You've got stuff like look at the keypad and press the 3 buttons that have fingerprints on them. Wow. and walk along the footprint path to see 3 things a guy touched, and then enter those 3 things on the symbol lock. There's just not much to appreciate here in the way of smart puzzle design. Nothing compared to some of the quality puzzles of the main campaign. The stained glass puzzle, the dining room puzzle, the laboratory energy path puzzles. You know, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense that the RE3 Remake team made this. Remember the train puzzle in that game? But you know what? At the end of the day, it is still RE4. It's more RE4. It may not be as good as the main campaign, but it's still RE4. You've got the monsters, the fun combat mechanics with melee, parries, knife executions, explosives. The locations are great to go back to, the new story bits are fun, and there's a good boss fight here and there. There's stuff I'm happy with, and stuff I'm not. It's mixed, and I probably won't play it again, while I replayed the main campaign I think 5 times. I'm glad we got the DLC, but I really wanted more from it. Maybe the main team should have been given this one. Anyway, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, let me know what you thought about the DLC, people seem to be pretty happy with it. And soon I hope to do a new episode of Everyone Told Me to Play featuring Resident Evil 6.